So social media has become essential in almost all presidential candidates, but most candidates will have to face what many of their predecessors have never had to face: internet trolls. According to Bot Sentinel, that's a site that tracks alleged inauthentic Twitter activity, online activities against Democratic candidate Pete Buttigieg have increased ahead of tonight's New Hampshire primary. Many of those attacks came after the former South Bend, Indiana mayor supported all the Oscar winners on Sunday. Yeah. So nearly 20% of the accounts replying to the tweet were social media bots. So CNET senior producer Dan Patterson is joining us now to break all of this down. Now, I'm sure that when he tweeted out his support for the Oscar winners, it's such a sort of blah tweet. Why did it attract so many bots?
Yeah, nonpartisan, apolitical, something we can all watch and enjoy without really thinking about politics, no matter what side of the aisle you come down on. This was fascinating. So let's tack the word alleged on to the beginning of this, just because it is incredibly difficult to figure out, like we talk about in cyber all the time, attribution. However, a pretty good analysis of this helped us realize, okay, Mayor Pete attracts a lot of inauthentic activity. In Anne Marie, a lot of this inauthentic activity tracks to his rise in the polls just before Iowa and his success at the Iowa caucus last week. In fact, we see these trolls, or these inauthentic, what we call troll bots, because some are sock puppets, real people behind inauthentic accounts, some are bots. We see them attacking almost every front runner through most of the stages of the campaign. But Mayor Buttigieg's attacks have come in the last week and do correlate with his rise in the polls and his success in Iowa.
So when we're talking about bots, what sort of stuff is being tweeted out? I know it can get pretty disturbing.
Yeah. So again, let's call these troll bots, because some are sock puppets, inauthentic, like real people in
troll
there.
/bots.
Right. Exactly. So some of this, Anne Marie, is really horrific, and they use language that is homophobic. They use language that is sexist. They use language that is designed to denigrate, or in other words, gaslight the candidate. Some of the tweets have propagated misinformation about Mayor Buttigieg killing dogs, a fake photoshopped image of a newspaper clipping that alleges he was somehow involved in killing dogs. Totally inauthentic. So these attacks do what we call gaslighting. They're designed to spread misinformation that takes down a candidate, or at least plants that seed of doubt in your mind, so that when you're exposed to other questionable information, that seed of doubt grows.
So not the first time that we've seen this sort of thing. Last week we saw alleged trolls pop up during the Iowa caucuses. What do we know about possible trolls trying to jam phone lines as well? Yeah,
so the Iowa caucus attracted a ton of attention from us in traditional media, from online media, and of course in some far-right extremist forums. In fact, we saw our reporting, as well as reporting on NBC News and others, found that there were calls in many of these forums to jam the phone lines. So these phone lines were used as a backup system and as a support system for the caucus. So we know that the app used by the precincts failed. The backup system was a telephone line. Those telephone lines were jammed, many by internet trolls, and far-right forums were encouraging people to call and jam those phone lines.
So, do we know the source of this troll/bot activity? We've talked extensively about stuff coming from overseas and, outside other countries trying to meddle in our election. But is some of this stuff homegrown? Some of it, do we know?
Yeah, so again, I'll go back to the familiar line that attribution is really hard. And we say that because one of the tactics used is misdirection. So sometimes bad actors, hackers, try to make it look like another person, country, or bad actor was responsible for their behavior. So we want to make sure that that's very clear. At the same time, Anne Marie, we see a rise of this domestically here in the United States. Yes, there are actors in Russia, China, and other places that are attacking the U.S. election and using misinformation and disinformation to do so. But we also see that these tactics are inexpensive and fairly easy to do. Calling and jamming phone lines or posting on message boards encouraging people to do that is inexpensive. In fact, during the special election in 2017, the Doug Jones special election, we saw groups affiliated with Democrats encourage forms of misinformation designed to gaslight their opponents. So this is a nonpartisan tactic that is inexpensive, easy to do, and designed to gaslight, meaning plant seeds of doubt so that when you are exposed to more misinformation, those seeds of doubt grow.
So what do you do if you're running a campaign? What are campaigns doing?
This is really hard, Anne-Marie. All of the campaigns are very aware that misinformation and disinformation is one of their top priorities, but it's really hard to counter these tactics. The trolls can move and change their tactics. Hackers can move and change their tactics far more rapidly than anyone is able to respond to those tactics. So it's one thing for us to see, okay, phone lines were jammed last week, but what about next week? What about South Carolina? What about Nevada? And the rest of the primary process going into the general election? We see misinformation and disinformation on the rise and used in almost all of these states.
So, Dan, that's why I think these conversations that we have are so important. I think it's really sort of pertinent that the mainstream media alert people to the possibilities that what you're reading may not be the truth. And I think sometimes we play into it a little. You know, we say, oh, on Twitter people are reacting to XYZ. Well, how authentic do we know that reaction is? You know, it's hard to tell these days.
There's a lot of noise out there.
Yeah. Dan, thank you so much.
Good to see you.